When you rearrange clips in a sequence or add clips or remove clips, you want to avoid inadvertently covering up clips that were already there or leaving gaps. And you do that by using what's called a keyboard modifier. I'm going to explain how to do that in this lesson. Let's start up a new project. Click on the New Project button. And we'll do the routine we've done before in this chapter, clicking on Browse, going to the desktop, selecting my Premiere Pro exercise files, clicking Select Folder. Let's call this project Modifier, like so. Click OK and skip the new sequence. As we've done before, and this will be the last time we do this in this chapter, I'd like you to go get those same 9 clips. Just double-click here to open up the Import dialog box. Click on the first scenic clip, and then Shift-click on the 9th one, and click Open. Now I'm going to go to List View here, and I want to create a new sequence by selecting the first 5 clips. So I click away to deselect, click on the first one, Shift-click on the 5th one, and drag these 5 clips down to the new item icon. There you go. That'll create a new sequence. It'll be called Scenic 1. If you want to change the name, that's fine. Click on it again. We'll just call it the Scenic sequence, as we've done before. There we go. And what I want to do now is rearrange clips here in the sequence in the timeline panel. Now, if I were to take scene 4 here, just drag it to the left like that, it'll do a couple of things that I don't want it to do. It's going to cover up scene 3, and it's going to leave a gap where scenic 4 was. It covered up scene 3 with a little bit left over there, and it left a gap. And that's probably not what you want to do. But you can avoid doing that by using a keyboard modifier. I'm going to go Control or Command Z to undo that. And so now, if you want to follow along, feel free. Just click on Scenic 4 like this. And now hold down the Control key in Windows or the Command key in Mac. And look what happens. You get this little icon with an arrow in the middle of it and 2 parallel lines. What that's saying is, if you lift this out now, the clip after it is going to fill the gap that's left by the clip that you remove, which is good. And once I drag it, I can let go of that Control or Command key. And now it's pointing down. When it's pointing down, what it means is it's going to do an overlay or an overwrite. It's going to cover up whatever's below it. But now I'm going to hold down the Control or the Command key again, and look what happens to the icon. It's going to point to the right, and look at those little white triangles there. They're saying that everything on all the tracks will be pushed to the right to accommodate this newly added clip. Here we go. And there you have it. Number 4 came from here. Everything slid over to fill the gap. We put it here, and everything slid over to make sure that nothing was covered up. That basically was a lift and an insert. And that is typically what you're going to want to do. You're not going to want to leave gaps. You're going to want to have the gaps get filled up automatically. And then when you put something someplace else, you typically don't want to overwrite it. You might want to leave a gap, and you might want to overwrite something, which is fine. Just realize that when you do that, you don't need to use a keyboard modifier. Let's try that again. I'm going to take the first clip. I want to move it to the end. Well, that's pretty straightforward. I can just take the first clip like this and move it to the end, and that's fine, but I leave this gap here. So I'm going to go Control or Command Z to undo that. Now I'm going to hold down my Control key in Windows or the Command key in Mac, and I'm going to get that little guy pointing to the left again, meaning that everything after this clip will slide over to fill in the gap when I move it. So now I'm going to move it. I can take my finger off the Control or the Command key now. I can do an overlay now or an overwrite. When I go to the end, I won't hold down the Control or the Command key because I don't need to. I'll just let it go. Everything's going to slide over and fill in that gap. Let's try one going forward now. I'm going to take scenic number 2 and put it after number 3. So I have my cursor hovered over scenic number 2, hold down the Control or the Command key, get that guy pointing to the left, meaning that the clip after it will fill the gap. I'll drag it out of there, let go of my Control or Command key. Doesn't make a difference at this point. Go to this point after number 3, push down the Control or Command key again. Now everything's pointing to the right. See all those triangles? It means that everything after this point is going to be pushed to the right. And there we have it. We took number 2, we moved it from this spot. Everything slid over to fill the gap. We put this thing here, and everything slid over to the right to allow that to slide in there without covering up anything. That is an insert edit. We did inserts up here using this command, and you can sort of see the command, how it works there. It shoves things to the right as it goes down. That's a sort of a graphic representation of an insert. This is an overwrite where you cover something up. We can do the same thing now when we add clips. Let's go get scenic number 6 here. I'm going to drag it to the sequence here. Now, if I just bring it here and let it go, look at the icon there, the little arrow pointing down. It says that you're going to make an overlay edit or an overwrite edit. It's going to cover up whatever's there or replace whatever's there. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to make this an insert. I want to shove things to the right. If I hold on the Control key in Windows or the Command key in Mac, there goes that little icon again saying that everything after this point will be moved to the right. And where those triangles are, that's where it's going to start. And so I'm going to cut scenic 3 and 2 if I put it here. Well, I'm going to go to the edit point there instead. I'm going to shove everything else off to the right, and we add number 6 between those two clips. Now, if I want to remove a clip, if I want to delete a clip, the process is not quite the same. If I take this clip out, hold on the control of the Command key and take it out, I haven't really removed it. I just moved it off to the side, but I have taken it out of the sequence at that point, but it's still sitting there in the sequence, just not in that order. Let me undo that by pressing Control or Command Z. What I want to do is delete this clip entirely, but I want all the rest of the clips to slide over to fill the gap. Now, if I just click on the clip to select it and press the Delete key on my keyboard, it's going to leave a gap. That's called deleting or clearing. If I do Control or Command Z to undo that, I'll put it back. If I right-click on the clip, I open up what's called a context menu. And context menus are contextual to whatever you right-click on. There are a bunch of menu commands here for right-clicking on a clip. If I right-click elsewhere, let's say over here, then it'll be a different context menu. Right-click inside the program monitor, again, a different context menu. So context menus are really helpful. So I'll right-click on this clip to open up its context menu, and there's a thing called Clear. If I click on that, the same kind of thing happens as before. We delete the clip and leave the gap. Let me do Control or Command Z to undo that. Instead, I want to delete the clip and then fill the gap. So I'm going to open up the context menu again. What I want to do now is do a ripple delete. You delete something and everything ripples over to fill the gap. So I do a ripple delete and clip number 6 will go away and everything else will fill the gap. Boom. 6 is gone, everything else slid over to fill the gap. That's called a ripple delete. Now, if I add something at the end of the sequence, I don't need to worry about a keyboard modifier. I just take scenic number 7 here and drag it to the end, like that. And I got the little overwrite icon pointing down. But in this case, I'm not overwriting anything, just blank space, so I can let it go, and that'll work just fine. Now, you might notice that when I drag clips over here, I can drag them to other tracks as well. And we'll do that later when we talk about compositing clips. But right now, I'm just aiming for this single track. As I mentioned before, we want to stick with one track and lay it down there. And you also notice this little yellow bar up here moves when I lay it down. That's called the work area bar. It always extends to the length of your sequence as you add more clips. The work area bar comes in handy when you export your video. We're not going to worry about the work area bar for now, but just be aware that's what's going on there. If you add a whole bunch of clips and you extend beyond the end of this thing, I'll add number 9 here. You sometimes will eventually run out of space. As I go along here, one more, and now we're kind of running out of space. So what do? Well, you can slide the scroll bar here in the bottom and move over that way. Or you can zoom out. If I zoom out like this, there we go. Using this little zoom bar on the bottom there, then I can zoom out. And it always centers on the current time indicator when you do that. So I put the current time indicator here, for example, and zoom out. You'll see that it zooms in, it centers, zoom out, and it'll eventually compress to the left there. So that's how you can change your view in case you sort of run out of real estate. But the goal here was to talk about keyboard modifiers when you rearrange or add clips, and also how to use the ripple delete when you remove clips, just to avoid leaving gaps or inadvertently overwriting clips in the sequence.